So December, not a typically huge month for smartphone launches, but of course that never stops our great mate Motorola, who've already spaffed out several new blowers this month, including a spangly new flagship over in China. Go check out last Friday's video for more on that. So yeah, just as I was getting ready to put my feet up with a pint of scotch and wait for that fatgate Santa to squeeze his almighty arse down my smoke hole, Motorola has sent in their fresh new Moto G31 budget-friendly smartphone. This bad boy costs just £169 or €199, and yet it packs in an OLED screen, very rare at this price point. You've got a 5000 mAh battery, 50 megapixel primary camera. Some pretty respectable specs indeed for that sort of sub £200 budget price point. But is the Motorola Moto G31 worth spunking your cash on? Well, going to whip it on out of the box, take you on a full-on tour of the hardware and the software, test the game and the camera, all that good stuff. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So first up, naturally, what do you get in the box besides the Moto G31? You have yourself one power adapter, one Type-C USB cable, you get a get started guide and all that shiz, and the Moto G31 is actually pre-sheathed in the bundled condom case as well. So it doesn't look particularly sexy, of course, but it will help protect your Motorola blower from harm. And that's your whack, nice and simple and straightforward. So now let's check out the phone. So if you want your smartphones to look as good as possible, you might want to keep that condom case on the Motorola Moto G31 because it is just a basic plastic back. That's not too surprising at all. Pretty much all of the Moto G31's rivals at this sub £200 price point are also constructed from plastic. As you can see there, you've got a textured finish as well. Should hopefully help with grip, and the Moto G31 seems reasonably good at hiding greasy prints and scuffs until the light catches that arse just so, and then yeah, some of those greasy marks do show up quite easily. But certainly not half as bad as on glossy alternatives. This right here is the mineral grey version of the Motorola Moto G31. You could also grab it in baby blue if you're so inclined. And it is a 6.4-inch smartphone, so pretty compact screen size as far as 2021 smartphones go, but fairly thick bezels surrounding that display, so it is still a bit of a handful. You're certainly going to want to get a bit of two-handed use on the go, because one-handed use is going to be a bit of a bum. And the Moto G31 doesn't mind getting moist. It is water repellent, so you can take a bit of a splash in. You can use it in the rain, absolutely fine, but definitely don't go dropping it in your jacuzzi or anything like that. And let's just have a wee poke at that SIM drawer as well and see what we're dealing with in this little blighter. And like a lot of budget smartphones, the Moto G31 has room for two SIMs at the same time. Alternatively, that second SIM slot can be used to house a micro SD memory card to expand the onboard storage. So the Moto G31 is all set up, good to go. Apologies for any screen flickering that is going on. I've tried to counter it by changing up the frame rate and everything, but nothing really seems to help. And what we have on here is not the latest, freshest Android 12, unfortunately. It is still on old Android 11. Motorola has guaranteed an update to Android 12 at some point, but they haven't actually said when that's going to happen. As for will the Moto G31 actually get Android 13 beyond it, well, we'll have to wait and see. But the good news is it's a nice stock version of Android. Motorola doesn't tinker with the formula too much at all, but what you do get is the Moto Experiences app, which adds a few very worthy bonus features indeed. It's going to help you to quickly customize the look and feel of your device by choosing your own style, so basically changing up the icons, the colors, the fonts. The gestures section, unsurprisingly, houses lots of gestures, such as the ability to swipe your finger across the screen to enter a good bit of split screen mode. And yes, the one I dearly love, the one that's closest to my heart, the double karate chop to turn on that torch. And because I'm a bit of a sad git, that always makes me feel like a proper badass. Wah! You've also got some tips and tricks to help you get all set up with your Moto G31 if you're not familiar with Motorola smartphones, some display features, and then a couple of my favorites down here as well. You got your media shenanigans, including a good bit of Dolby Atmos action. This can just tinker with the audio output to suit whatever you're up to at the time, be it blasting some tunes, kicking back some Netflix. And there's also the GameTime feature for anyone who likes to blast a bit of Call of Duty, PubG, all of that good stuff, and I'll touch on that later. Oh, it'd help if I actually turn that torch off as well. And for your security-based shenanigans, you do actually have a fingerprint sensor built into that power button, slightly indented so it's quite easy to find with your finger without having to fumble around. Not always the quickest to respond, but it's not particularly lethargic either, and it seems to get my print 9 times out of 10, so that's definitely a bonus. And you will notice that over here on that right edge of the Moto G31, it is rather cluttered. You've got the power button fingerprint sensor, and above that a volume rocker, and then above that another button. And this is the dedicated Google Assistant button that pretty much all of these stock budget smartphones seem to have these days. And as always, I don't really see the point in it because you can quickly and easily call up the Google Assistant in all kinds of different ways, like swiping up from the bottom corner. You know, you can do a voice search by swiping this way. You got the little mic icon there, just give that a poke. You can even, if you want to, add an assistant shortcut right there to your desktops. And the fact that you can't actually remap that assistant button to any other preferred app or feature is kind of a ball ache, but hey-ho. I believe that Motorola is offering the Moto G31 in 2 different flavours here in the UK, 64 or 128 gigs as far as the storages goes. As you can see, I got 64 gigs right here, good chunk of that already used up by the likes of the system. So if you're going to be shooting a lot of photos and video and stuff on your blower, you might want to upgrade to that double storage model. That said, at least you've got that memory card support as well, so you can bung in a micro SD memory card up to 1 terabyte in size if you need to expand quickly and cleanly. Now, as I mentioned back at the beginning of this lovely video, the Moto G31's OLED screen is one of the more unique features at this budget price point where pretty much every rival has an IPS instead. Thankfully, that flickering isn't visible to the naked eye, at least not for me anyway. And in terms of the actual visual output as well, it's a Full HD Plus panel, 2400 by 1080, so reasonably crisp visuals on there. Because it's an OLED, you've got nice deep blacks and pretty sharp contrast, certainly again for this price point. And I really like the punchy, poppy colours as well, which are definitely a step up from what you would expect from most other smartphones. And yeah, if you want to, you can dial that back a little bit, just stick it on the more natural setting for a more subdued feel, but I quite like that saturated, super vibrant effort. And if you bump up the brightness to the maximum levels, you can see what's going on outdoors even on a fairly bright sunny day. Nice wide viewing angles and everything as well. And when you go full screen, there's only a minor intrusion by that selfie cam orifice up top, nothing too horrific at all. However, the refresh rate is locked at 60Hz here on the Moto G31, so unlike some IPS rivals which do boost up to 90Hz or even 120Hz, none of that unfortunately here. So you don't get that lovely silky smooth experience that you do get on some others with those more basic IPS panels. And as usual with Motorola blowers, it is just a mono speaker setup here on the Moto G31, but let's see if it's any good. However, as someone with decidedly stumpy fingers and limited trouser pocket space, the iPhone Pro Max was most certainly not made for me. Yeah, top volume not too bad at all here on the Moto G31. I'll be fine if there's a bit of background clamour going on. Slightly tinny output, of course, as you'd probably expect. I would definitely highly recommend getting some headphones on the go if you want to enjoy some music or even just be fully immersed in your bit of video action. And the good news is, like a lot of other smartphones at this budget price point, you do get a headphone jack here on the G31. You've also got a good bit of Bluetooth 5.0 support as well, and the Bluetooth streaming touchwood seems absolutely fine on the G31 here. Now, performance is certainly not a strong suit of the Motorola Moto G31. It's powered by the MediaTek Helio G85, backed by just 4 gigs of RAM. And for any benchmarking fans out there, as you can see, pretty basic Geekbench results. But so far, touch wood, the Moto G31 everyday running has been alright. Not exactly buttery smooth as you'd expect, the odd judder and stumble here and there. But what about gaming? I hear maybe a handful of you cry. Well, again, the Moto G31 very limited, so definitely good to lower your expectations. The likes of Call of Duty Mobile will play. It is perfectly playable, although I did see quite a few frame rate drops here and there throughout a couple of games that I played earlier. Thankfully, it didn't impact my performance. I'd like to think because I've got the mad skills, but it's mostly because I think I was just up against some people who are even more inept than I am. I actually managed to get the MVP on my first game, in fact, and certainly the screen is perfectly responsive and everything. But yeah, no, if you are a gamer, I would suggest looking elsewhere just to be on the safe side. And yes, you do have Motorola's GameTime feature, which you can swipe onto the screen at any time. It doesn't have the full range of features you'll get on more premium Motorolas, but it's got all the essentials like the notifications blocking. And no, there is no 5G support, sadly, here on the Moto G31. Not a given at this price point by any means, although you will be able to find some 5G phones around the sub £200 mark if you look close enough. The likes of the very sexily titled TCL20R 5G and the Poco M4 Pro 5G as well. They usually chuck 5G in the name there to make it extra easy. And the Motorola Moto G31 also packs in a 5000 mAh battery, which again is fairly common at this sort of price point. And touchwood so far, that battery drain has been minimal because that MediaTek processor is quite energy efficient. So hopefully it should see you through a full day, no worries. And when it is time to recharge, sadly just 10 watt charging, so not exactly particularly nippy. And last up, let's finish with a squint at the camera tech. And what you've got on the back end there is a triple lens setup headed up by a 50 megapixel primary sensor. And you've got your standard Motorola camera apps stuffed on here as well, absolutely packed with features, including that camera AI action. This does helpfully suggest maybe switching up to the portrait mode when it detects a gorgeous face like Veronica's here. Otherwise also the likes of night mode if the lighting conditions aren't great. And speaking of those bonus camera modes, you've got absolutely loads of the buggers slapped here on the Moto G31. As you can see, there are plenty to play around with, including classic Motorola efforts like spot color. Good bit of pro mode action as well if you want to play around with factors like the white balance, the ISO level. Of course, most people will just keep the Moto G31 locked on that auto mode, and you can expect pretty basic results with this blower, as you would probably expect at this sort of price point. If the conditions are perfect, then you can get some really nice snaps. Also, if you're patient and take lots and lots of different photos, you can generally get a couple that look alright in fairly tested conditions, but more often than not, the likes of sharp contrast, extreme brightness, and also low light will throw off the Moto G31, and you'll probably end up chucking a lot of snaps away, especially if you're trying to shoot a living subject, which moves around, and that often causes the Moto G31 issues. As usual, you've got an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle snapper you can swap to at any point on that auto mode, and again, this struggles really badly in low light or tricky conditions, so definitely use it sparingly. And like a lot of manufacturers, Motorola hasn't stopped there. They've also chucked in a 2 megapixel macro shooter, which you can swap to this at any point by tapping the little flower icon, and yeah, it's there if you want some really low detailed up close shots of stuff. As for the video mode here on the Moto G31, well, it's full HD footage all the way. There's no way of bumping that up to 4K level. Unfortunately, there's no 60 FPS option either, so very straightforward and simple stuff. And, you know, if you want very basic looking home movies, it's fine. Again, the usual caveats that you can't really use it at night time or when you've got some sharp contrast or anything, because that just throws everything off. And then last up, around front is a 13 megapixel selfie shooter, just housed there at the top end of the display. And again, it's okay for your everyday shareable shots. I mean, you tell me what you think of these gorgeous pictures of this this rather bold, pasty mug right here. Actually didn't do too bad in the low light, to be perfectly honest. It was alright. And that right there, in the proverbial nutshell, is the Motorola Moto G31, a budget-friendly smartphone hitting the UK right now, in fact, for 169 quid for the 64 gig base model. And yeah, the highlight of the G31, the thing that sets it above and most of its peers at this sort of price point, is the OLED display. If you want those really poppy, jazzy colours to slap you in the face, the nice deep blacks and all of that, then job done. But of course, there are some caveats. The camera tech is rather basic, as is the performance. So are you tempted by the Moto G31? It'd be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Perhaps you've actually got one already, you've been using it as your full-time phone. It'd be great to hear from you guys as well. Please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more of the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a bloody wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.